The message I'd like to give today, I would like to invite the young people to really concentrate on. It's something that you will have to learn how to do as you grow further into the church. I'd like to do a little exercise here with everybody. If you could, please close your eyes and let's think about the feelings that your body would have, the feelings that would come over your mind as we go through the scenario. Your feet move on their own, one foot in front of the other. You don't even have to think about your feet moving. While you're walking, your friend leans on you, almost asleep, as you trudge through the night, through the snow, and through the muck. You take turns propping each other up as you march, and as you look down, you can see trails of blood in the snow from his and your rag-covered feet. It's a frigid, freezing 21 degrees with blowing snow and howling wind, and the mud on the trail has started to freeze. Every step sends the feeling of needles deep into your feet. Every few hours you stop, take a breather, and you and your friend take turns changing and rewrapping each other's bare feet to keep the snow and ice away from your feet as best as possible. Off in the distance, you can hear men groaning and horses neighing under stress as they move 18 cannons through the mud and the muck and up steep inclines and through deep valleys and ravines. Some of the artillery pieces weigh as much as 1,750 pounds, and right behind them, men push and pull carts along the trail carrying gunpowder and ammunition. Can you feel the cold on your feet? Can you feel the wind biting on your cheek? And can you hear the men trudging through the snow and the muck? You're tired, and every part of your body hurts. But somehow, apart from all of this, you're completely invigorated. You're excited to be here. You can feel excitement surging through the column of 2,400 men as your general rides up and down the lines, checking on you and your compatriots. He yells words of encouragement and tells you to keep going and urges victory or death. These words inspire you and keep you going. For you are a soldier in the Continental Army and on your way to surprise the British Army at Trenton. And it truly shall be victory or death. You see, it was December 1776 during the Revolutionary War, and the Continental Army was demoralized, on the run, and Washington knew that if something wasn't done quickly, with the men's conscriptions or their contracts being up December 31st, most of the army was going to leave. And once the army left, with no victories, the army would be decimated. There would be no more revolution, and the dream of freedom would be dead. He realized the only chance to win or even survive was to surprise attack the British at Trenton. As we look over this, and as we study Washington's decision-making during these extraordinary circumstances, there are three leadership keys that emerge that I'd like to expand on. Now, I'd like to speak to the young people here, to the young men and the young women. I'd like you to realize that leadership doesn't mean that you're out in front of the crowd. It doesn't mean you're out in front of somebody at all times. Leadership can be at any time. It can be leading your family. It can be leading your children. It can be when you're put in charge of a potluck. It can be when you're put in charge of an event that somebody would like you to take care of. Leadership throughout your life happens at all different stages. These examples are relevant for both the young men and the young women. The first point that came out that I really, really liked was that heroes exist in the most unlikely places. Henry Knox was a bookseller. He ran a bookshop that served as Washington's chief artillery officer. And before the war, all he had done was sold books. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a farmer. He wasn't familiar with heavy artillery. He managed a bookstore. And according to George Washington's own words, Knox's efforts made the attack on Trenton possible. As a devastating blizzard engulfed the area late on Christmas night, the river seemed impassable. Massive chunks of ice were floating down the river. But Knox, who had been put in charge by Washington himself, coordinated efforts to load the Army's few remaining artillery pieces onto the creaky flatboats and to navigate the ice-choked river. I've seen ice chunks floating down the river, and I think about what he had to do, and I'm amazed that he was even able to do this. I mean, these ice chunks can easily topple over a boat. Now, once across, it was his leadership that allowed and inspired these men to transport this heavy machinery up and down the icy hills in the midst of a historic blizzard. Washington later said he was stunned by Knox's confidence and impressed by his routine, matter-of-fact way that Knox explained his plan to Washington. He had horses drag artillery pieces up frozen hills in the middle of a snowstorm in the dark, using malnourished and barefoot soldiers. Yet Knox made it seem like it was an ordinary, everyday event. Not a big deal. We need to get it done? Let's get it done. Turn with me, please, to 1 Samuel 17:28. First Samuel 17:28. When Eliab, David's older brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, "Why have you come here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the desert?" And as you can tell, we're talking about David. After he left the sheep and went to see his brothers at the war site, "I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You come down only to watch the battle." Now, I like what David said here. David, to me, has always had a sense of humor. He said, "Now what have I done? What have I done to you? I can't even speak. In other words, I can't even say anything without you getting mad," kind of poking at his brothers. He then turned away to someone else and brought up the same matter, and the man answered him as before. What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Here we have a young boy, simply a shepherd, was not trained in the art of war. And even Samuel told him this. "You're not able to go out against this Philistine and fight. You are only a boy, and he has been a fighting man from his youth." This giant that you're talking about has been trained to fight and kill in hand-to-hand combat since his youth. And you're only a shepherd. What makes you think that you're going to be able to kill this man? Historians say that David was anywhere from 4'11" to 5'5" tall, right in the sweet spot. I think everybody that's 4'11" to 5'5", there's nothing wrong with them. They're good people. But he became a leader, a man among men, and most importantly, a man of God, and a man after God's own heart. See, David was a hero that was needed by his brethren at that time, and he came out of nowhere. Only God knew that he had the ability to do what needed to be done. So remember, heroes come out of nowhere and can come out of nowhere. Second point, hold steady in the face of the but-sirs. We'll get to that. Now, once Washington made his decision to cross the Delaware and attack, he never wavered. As soon as the order was disseminated through the ranks, leaders were hit with the barrage of "but sirs" from their underlings. "But sir, the river is filled with ice. But sir, these boats were not designed to transport cannons. But sir, my men haven't eaten in 3 days and we haven't slept. We will not survive this march. But sir, the British are well rested, well fed, well slept, and we do not stand a chance in battle. But sir, hold steady in the face of the but sirs." As a potential leader within the church, how often will you deal with the resistance to a tough decision? Washington responded by increasing the level of communication so that everyone had a better understanding of his decision, as illustrated in this brief aside to his officers. This is him talking to his officers. "If we do not win soon, there will be no army left. When there is no army left, this rebellion will be over. When the rebellion is over, we will all be hung. Therefore, we have little to lose." He ignored the but sirs. Turn with me, please, to Numbers 13:25. Numbers 13:25. While you're turning there, I remember when I was younger, living in Corpus, I complained to my dad one time, and one thing you should never do is complain to your dad about something, especially my dad. Because if you complained about it, you were next in line to do it. And I complained to him, I said, "Why do we never have any volleyball tournaments in Corpus? Why do we never have any basketball tournaments? Why are we always going to Houston? Why are we always going to Dallas? Why don't we have any teen events in Corpus?" And he said, "You know what? You're absolutely right. So why don't you put one on?" And I knew I had messed up at that point. But I had to keep going. I had to finish what he told me I needed to do. So as I started planning this event, he told me, "Now, I want you to understand something. You're young. You're planning an event. There will be people that tell you it cannot be done, why you shouldn't do it, why it's too expensive, why nobody will want to come. And they're also going to tell you after the fact why you shouldn't have done it. But you have to ignore that, and you have to do it anyways." And sure enough, we put on the event, we had a great time, and we got 2 or 3 complaints after the fact from different parents for different reasons. But him and my minister, Mr. Bald at the time, said, "Look at it this way. You had 350 people come down to Corpus for a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. You had church services, you had a luau, you had a beach day the next day, and 3 out of 350 people complained. You're always going to have people complain. So remember that. Remember the but sirs." So Numbers 13:25, and we're talking about Joshua and Caleb as they spied out the land, and they were returning. They returned from looking over the land after 40 days, and they came to Moses and Aaron and to all the people of Israel in the desert of Paran at Kadesh. They brought the news to them and to all the people, and they showed them the fruit of the land. You know how the story goes. They told Moses, "We went to the land where you sent us. It does flow with milk and honey. This is the fruit. Look at these grapes. Look at these plums. Look at these dates. This is the fruit. But sir," let's insert that in there. "But sir, the people who live there in the land are strong. But sir, the cities have walls and are very large. But sir, we saw the children of Anak there," and Anak's relatives were rumored to be giants. "Amalek is living in the land of Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites are living in the hill country, and the Canaanites are living by the sea and by the side of the Jordan. It's great, but here's all the reasons we shouldn't go in." Then Caleb told the people in front of Moses, "Be quiet." Now, I wish I would have been there to understand and hear the inflection of his voice and to hear what he actually said. Caleb told the people in front of Moses to be quiet, and he said, "Let us go up at once and take the land." 12 spies, and 10 gave but sirs, and 2 wanted to move forward. "For we are well able to take it in battle." But the men who had gone up with him said, "But sir, We are not able to go against these people. They are too strong for us. So they brought the people of Israel bad news about the land they had spied out. The land was exactly what God told them it was going to be. A land flowing with milk and honey, overrun with produce, perfect for grazing, and all they could do is complain about the people that were going to keep them from living there. The land you've gone to spy out is a land that destroys those who go there to live. All the people we saw in it are very large. But, sir, we saw the Nephilim there. We looked like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. Now, later on in chapter 14, verse 7, they said to all the people of Israel, the land we passed through to spy out is very good land. If the Lord is pleased with us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us. It is a land that flows with milk and honey. Only do not go against the Lord. Are you more afraid of the people that you are going against, or are you more afraid of what the Lord is going to do to you if you don't do what he asks you to do? And do not be afraid of the people of the land, for they will be our food. They have no way to keep safe, and the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them. Joshua and Caleb went against the grain. They went against the 10 other spies that scoured the land with them. And what happened? Because of that, there were the only two out of the original 12 spies that actually got to live in the promised land. They ignored the but-sirs. My third point, be visible and communicate your vision. Washington didn't say it just once. He repeated himself over and over, up and down the line of his men. He kept repeating his vision over and over. Cross the river, move the artillery, and cross Jacob's Creek. In 12 hours, it will be victory or death. Now, did everyone agree with this plan? I doubt it. I'm sure there was people who said, this is idiocy. But did they execute the mission? Absolutely. A Continental soldier's diary recounts that for every mile he covered on foot, he estimated that General Washington covered 10 to 12 miles on horseback, riding back and forth, checking the front of the line, and then riding to the back and checking the back. The soldiers knew their leader was invested and that he was fighting right by their side. Paul, throughout his life as recorded in Acts, was a very zealous individual. As a Pharisee, he violently opposed the spread of Christianity, going out of his way to see Christians killed and imprisoned. But when Jesus changed his mind, he became equally adamant about the truth of Christianity. And he traveled all over his known area, spreading the message about Jesus and establishing churches everywhere he went. Leaders, whether in something that you're dealing with is small or something that is visible and large, should be driven by a sense of purpose. It doesn't matter what you as a young person are leading or a part of, you should be driven and have a sense of purpose and do it with zeal. Leaders should have a fire lit under them and feel accomplished, compelled to accomplish their objectives. There is no place for apathy in the life of a leader, no matter how small or how big, how invisible or how visible. Leaders care, and they care deeply. A good rule of thumb for leaders is that the tougher the mission, the harder something is going to be to accomplish, the higher your visibility within that space should be. Let's put ourselves back on the line, walking through that frozen mud and muck. And as you reach the outskirts of Trenton, the general divides you up into two columns and leads one himself. He doesn't appoint somebody else to lead the column. He's out in front. He believes in this mission. And before you know it, 9 days have passed and the battle is over. The Hessian forces lost 22 killed in action, including their commander, 83 wounded, and 896 captured. The Americans suffered only 2 deaths during the march and 5 wounded from battle, including a near-fatal shoulder wound to future President James Monroe. So the 3 points: heroes come from unlikely places. Second, hold steady in the face of the but-sirs. And 3, be visible and communicate your vision at all times. Now, Washington's army went on to win the Battle of Trenton and to win again at Princeton. The momentum of those wins turned the war in the favor of the American forces, eventually leading to American independence 15 years later. And I believe that the momentum truly began with the perseverance of one man, General Washington, directing his forces to victory through a blinding snowstorm. Nearly 250 years later, General Washington's leadership lessons are as valuable today as they were that snowy night on the banks of the Delaware River.